Today, Disney's Lightyear flops in theaters. The Uvalde police reportedly didn't even try to open classroom doors, and Joe Biden takes a tumble. We've got all of that and more coming up, and it all starts right now. Welcome to the News and Why It Matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Happy Monday. Oh, I hope everyone had a good weekend. I'm joined today by BlazeTV contributor Eric July, host of For Canon's Sake, and also joined by BlazeTV host Stu Burguiere, host of Stu Does America. You need to be subscribed to both of these gentlemen's YouTube channels. So I want to get into, guys, I felt like two of the best people I could have on the show are on it today to talk about this Lightyear stuff. Stu, I heard on Glenn's radio show that you were dying to see it. You were like going to go see it on opening day. You were so excited about the new Disney movie Lightyear. So I'll be interested to hear how it was from a first-person perspective. But so Lightyear, obviously, its first weekend out over the weekend, and it earned, let's see, the whole weekend, $51.7 million in North America. Not only did it open way lower than expected, it also failed to conquer Jurassic World Dominion, which I heard also really sucks. And that still held on to the first place spot with $58.7 million in its second weekend. Toy Story launched Pixar in 1995. Its four films have made over $3 billion. Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4 also broke both the $1 billion mark. And look, this is obviously really, really disappointing, I would say, for Disney. But it was kind of being speculated, why? How could this be? What possible reason could people have not to go see this movie? A couple things floating around here. Number one, Tim Allen obviously was not asked to voice Buzz Lightyear. He was, of course, the traditional, the first Buzz Lightyear voice. They went with Chris Evans instead. Then, of course, there was the same-sex stuff, the same-sex controversy that we've covered on this program. And there was a kiss and apparently a family scene. And who knows what it would be, but there were a bunch of countries, obviously not this one, that decided that they were not going to even show it. They were going to ban it from even being shown because it didn't fit their content guidelines. And Disney decided, no, you know what, we're going full woke. We don't care. And now they've had the disappointment here in the United States. So I don't know. Who's to say what it is, if parents are just fed up with Disney in general, or if they just didn't care to see it because they didn't, they were mad about Chris Evans taking the spot of Tim Allen. What say you guys?
All right, well, it's a couple of things. This is stuff I keep my pulse on, obviously, and we talk about every day on my show. To put this in perspective for the viewers out there, I believe Toy Story 4 opened up with almost $130 million dollars.
Like, wow, that's great.
It ended up making $8 billion, of course. So to compare that, this made, it didn't make anything near it. Yeah. And they spent like $200 million, which I think to me is unorthodox for something that was animated, as it was $200 million, I believe, they spent on this movie. So at this trajectory, you brought up a great point with the fact that it is not being aired in every single country. A lot of both in Middle East and Asia are not showing it because they refuse to pull that scene. And generally when Disney does stuff like that, that's exactly what it is they do. They put it in there to a way that they can remove it for an international market. But they painted themselves in this corner with this recent signaling. So if they did that, it would look entirely bad. So now they have to commit to something. So they're going to lose money there. They've not made hardly anything. It's going to be really close to see if this is even going to make any sort of money when you consider how much they put into the movie itself, as well as the money that they're going to put in marketing. And I do think there was a certain direct effort to not have Tim Allen involved. We know where he tends to align on a lot of political issues. Chris Evans is a deranged leftist for sure, so he's right, perfect for certainly them. But their way of saying that was avoidable is because, well, it's not actually based on the toy Buzz Lightyear. It's basically a prequel in the sense that the toy is based on this character, which still doesn't make any sense because it's still his voice. So you would think you still get Tim Allen to play it. So we know it was a direct effort. The same-sex kiss or whatever, they took it out, then they put it back in, and they really signaled about the fact that it was put in. It was a bunch of Pixar employees that pimped Disney into doing it, making sure that they had that in. So they're getting exactly what it is that they deserve. To add on this, which you guys might not care as much about, Miss Marvel, also by Disney, had the worst weekend, worst opening that it's had, and it's like on Disney Plus, not even 1 million views in that 5-day period. To put that in perspective, Kenobi, which comes out at the same time, got 2 million. So it got, like, I think 770K viewers. People are simply not interested in it. Now, I don't think this is enough. The fact that it still made 51 million for me is way too much, considering what this company has been committed to. But I was over this weekend, did a whole lot of Fan Expo nerd stuff, so this is right up kind of our alley here. And you can actually see that there is there's a shift happening among this sort of culture, and a lot of people are sick of this.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
You enjoyed the movie?
First of all, no, I did not see it. I don't know why you're painting me into this corner here. No, I did not see it. I don't intend to see it.
Really?
You know, the Toy Story thing, you know, I remember seeing those movies when they came out, and, you know, they were good. They were pretty good movies. Like, I remember liking them. You know, my kids haven't seen them, so
they haven't?
No, they haven't seen any of them yet. As far as I know. Maybe they've seen one of them, I don't know. But generally speaking, they're not, like, on the edge of their seats waiting for the updated new movie to come out. So.
My kids really, my older son really enjoyed all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember them being really sad at times. That's one thing I remember about one of them. It was like soul crushing when one of the things died, and I'm like, I don't know how to have my kid. I don't. They're gonna have enough sadness in the world. I don't need them to be crying at movies this young. But anyway, that's just sort of a side point. You know, it's funny because, like, look, you should be able as a creative company to tell any story you want, any way you want to tell it, and they have the right, I think, to do this. And they can do what they feel like doing. And, like, there might be a place for certain movies to tell certain stories about certain different cultures. We've seen this; they do this all the time. They bounce around the world with, you know, festivals in Mexico, and they tell the stories based, and that's okay, like, totally fine. What they did here, I thought, was particularly egregious because it's in there for no reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's no point of the story. It's just, hey, we're just going to put a gay kiss in the middle of this for no reason in a movie targeted to kids. And it's like, they're doing this intentionally, right, to try to create the controversy, to try to say we're woke, we're better than you, to make a statement, to virtue signal. I mean, that term gets overused, but this is exactly what they're doing here. And, like, the best possible thing that can happen to push back against this is what we saw here, which is largely a failure. I mean, you know, movie theater, the back envelope math of a movie opening is half. So if they make 51 million, really about 26 million, 25.5 million is going to the movie company against their bottom line. You know, you get to, if they clear their budget by $2 million, they're not making money on that movie.
Lost. If they did that, they lost the money.
They lost a ton. Yeah. So, you know, this is a really bad start. It's hard to overstate how bad this is. And this is a franchise that should be impervious to any of this stuff. You know, like, there's just a sense, I think, that's building in America that people are just tired of this. You know, they just want to be able to enjoy things without all your political nonsense involved. I see it all the time in sports. People just tune out. They don't want to see it anymore. They don't want to watch it anymore. It's just too in their face. You see it now on television. You're seeing it in movies. You're seeing it everywhere. And I will always defend an artist's, ability to be able. I mean, music's a great example of that. Like, you know, you make political statements in your music all the time, and, like, that should be okay, and part of it. You can do it if you want, but realize what you're doing, right? Yeah. Realize that there probably are socialists that would love your music, but are like, I can't deal with his, you know, individual rights stuff. So, you know, like that, it's okay to do it, but realize
freedom, liberty.
Realize you might pay some consequence for that financially. And one of the things I like about this one is it wasn't some big organized boycott. It's not some political movement led by a politician. Yeah. It's just a bunch of people saying, I'm not interested. I'm tired of your nonsense, and I'm not going to go pay.
Okay, and so to that point, in response to all of those people, Chris Evans, who of course we just mentioned, is the new voice of Buzz Lightyear in this particular remake. He said in an interview ahead of the debut of Lightyear, he said he was referring to the people who were critical of throwing this woke scene in there. He said the real truth is those people are idiots. Every time there's been social advancement as we wake up, the American story, the human story, is one of constant social awakening and growth, and that's what makes us good. There's always going to be people who are afraid and unaware and trying to hold on to what was before. But those people die off like dinosaurs. I think the goal is to pay them no mind, march forward, and embrace the growth that makes us human. Look, so if you don't want your children exposed to that, you're a dinosaur and you're just going to die off.
This is the art of Disney, pretty much, again, a lot of our viewers may not keep their pulse on this. I have a story for this like every day on my show of a bunch of people on the campaign trail for whatever they're doing. It could be TV or film. And they're basically telling their audience how much they suck. Star Wars is, I guess, just the worst, where they keep doing this, where it's weird, where you have Ewan McGregor and all these weirdos are coming out trying to hyper-emphasize this as if there's this like corner of racist Star Wars fans and gaslighting all of their audience. Like, they get off on this, and this is to your point. And I think this is the difference in what you have something like Toy Story, you have something like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all of them are dealing with the same exact problem right now where they can't shut up. Those brands were not built upon signaling to leftists, period. You don't get that big by catering to basically one side of the political aisle. It's nearly impossible to get that big. For whatever reason, they are all in. It's a long time infiltration process, but they're all in on basically doing things or saying things out of spite to their ideological enemies. Chris Evans, if anybody has followed this idiot on Twitter, he is exactly what you would think of modern day Hollywood. He has no idea what it is they're talking about, and he has the mystique of Hollywood is gone, and I embrace that because all these idiots telling themselves on various forms of social media, and they really don't like us. Us at this table, they hate us. So the difference, what I've been trying to get people to realize is, all right, why do you keep funding these idiots? And maybe now we're starting to get to a point where people are like, look, I do not have to do this. I don't need to watch Toy Story. I don't have to have or Lightyear. I don't have to have my children consume this media. There's plenty of it out there that's, number one, far better. Doesn't insult, and this is what they're going to hide behind. Same thing they're doing with the Miss Marvel. Well, it wasn't for you. It was made for children. It's like, why would you want your children to watch something so dog crap anyway? I think they deserve better, certainly, than that. But on a serious note, I think we're entering the brink of a sort of cultural renaissance. I had a great conversation over this weekend, kicking it with Gina Carano, and we talked about a lot of this stuff and independent creators and doing a lot of stuff. We do not have to continue to fund this old guard, and I certainly welcome that. It's probably going to lose a lot of money, and they get exactly what they deserve.
Yeah. You're going to die off like a dinosaur. So.
I know, very soon. Of course, it couldn't beat the dinosaur movie at the box office, which is like you're supposed to. I thought it's going to die off as a dinosaur. I think there's a line too with kids.
Yeah.
I think I'll watch some of these art house movies. It's all nonstop messaging, right? Like, but it's not aimed at kids. Like, it's the same thing with the drag queen thing. No one cares that drag queens are performing for adults, in a nightlife area, whatever. No one cares. When the kids are targeted with it, it becomes there's a big line there. And I think, especially with something like this, with Toy Story, this sort of stuff will lead to conversations in boardrooms as they're going through this process to say, look, why are we bothering with this? I understand. Look, I'm on the same side as you. I'm a leftist too, I'm sure, is what they're saying in all these rooms. But like, why are we going to risk $50 million and not, your career taking a hit and my job taking a hit to put in 1 3-second kiss scene? Right. Like, what are we even getting out of that? Let's take $10 million and make a movie specifically targeted to gay families, right? We can make the whole movie about that. But like, why are we just slipping this agenda into what's supposed to be a safe product? Our whole And again, like, you can disagree. You could say that people are being too sensitive over that, whatever you think. But like, it's obviously not fundamental to the mission of the movie, which is supposed to be just to entertain kids. And instead of doing that, they're trying to slip all this stuff in. They know it's influential on kids, and that's why they do it. And that's why parents react this way. And if they continue to do it, they're going to get half the country saying, you know what, screw off. There's plenty of other stuff for me to watch out there. I'll go find that stuff, and I'll leave you guys behind. And slowly, these executives will be taught that if they want to be able to make their millions of dollars and have these successes, they're going to have to actually respect people. They're going to have to care a little bit about parents and what they're trying to do, whether they agree with it or not.
Yeah. All right, we've got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Freedom Project Education. So, look, we've got a bunch of woke teachers. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we've got a bunch of woke teachers who are like going on social media. Go look at Libs of TikTok's account. They're bragging on social media about pushing radical, sometimes sexually charged propaganda on kids as young as 5. There are even reports of teachers secretly hosting drag shows for students without the consent of the parents, all with the blessing of teachers' unions, of course, and some members of Congress. So if you have gotten fed up with the education system and you want a real education for your child, you got to try out Freedom Project Academy. They've been doing live online learning for way longer, since before COVID. It's like more than a decade. They are built on Judeo-Christian values and a classical curriculum, and they are teaching your children how to think, not what to think, and definitely not the leftist propaganda that we're talking about specifically surrounding this movie. Look, you got to do it for your kids, okay? Go to freedomforschool.com. That is freedomforschool.com. Get your child enrolled at Freedom Project Academy before the spots fill up. It is freedomforschool.com. FINA, the international governing body for swimming competitions, approved new policies for transgender swimmers on Sunday. The new restrictions bar transgender athletes from competing against women in elite events except under one condition, and that is that they will allow transgender swimmers to compete if they have transitioned by the age of 12. Now, seems a little weird, okay, but they did say, the spokesperson for this particular organization said, this is not saying that people are encouraged to transition by the age of 12. It's what the scientists are saying, that if you transition after the start of puberty, you have an advantage, which is unfair. But I don't know how else you interpret that.
Well,
the way that they're right, the way that parents are going, and the way that the mental health community is going, and they're pushing this on children younger and younger. It's like, how else does this roll out other than we have to hurry up and do it when they're younger?
That's a CYA. That's all that part is. They know damn well that that's going to be the response with some of these loony people that are, for whatever reason. I mean, look, man, I'm relatively young, and I just can't even imagine something, even when I was competing at this level, that this would even be a conversation. If you would have had this conversation with me, it wasn't even 10 years ago when I was competing at the collegiate level in track and field, and I would have never thought that we'd be having a conversation about transgendered athletes competing in women. I would have never thought that to be the case, and yet here, certainly we are. And now, because of this, with Leah Thomas or whatever is going on, we're having to have a conversation about this and try to safeguard that people think the sanctity of the sport, even though we know it's cruel and corrupt. And even having there's even female professional athletes, like Rapinoe and all these, who are coming out against stuff like that, because I guess them getting destroyed by 15-year-old boys wasn't enough. Just infiltrate their entire sport, and they're perfectly fine with that. But we talked about this, obviously, off air, about what this means for youngsters and consent and all of that. We are entering in such dangerous territory that it may be a lot of conflict that may be happening out of this, and it's going to be certainly a sight to see, man. These leftists are seeming to wanting to normalize making very dangerous decisions, life-altering decisions at such a young age. And what could that mean for other things?
In so many ways, I think, specifically over the last couple of years, they just really want to turn our children into science experiments.
Oh yeah, it does seem like to be the goal.
Yeah.
But the worst part is they don't act like it's an experiment at all.
Right.
They act as if it's a sure thing that everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Every expert agrees on the best way to approach this, which is obviously wrong. I mean,
Right.
it's, there's so much research that shows the opposite. But regardless, I mean, I kind of like if you look at it from the sports perspective, like the swimming federation or whatever, you could understand why they would say, okay, if the transition's done really early, maybe there's less of an advantage, and therefore, like the earlier it happens, the less advantage you might get, and then therefore it might not be as disruptive to our swimming competitions. This is a good reminder, though, that this is not an actual conversation about sports. Like, I really like sports. I really care about sports. I don't really care about women's sports. No offense, sir.
I don't really care about women's sports either.
The way to know whether I'm interested in the women's sport or not is my daughter involved in it? And then yes, all other answers are no. So I don't care what happens to women's sports, frankly, at all. It's not really why we're talking about this,
Right.
though. It's a great illustration, I think. That's what the sports part of this conversation has been interesting, and I think it brings it home to a lot of parents who say, wait a minute, this is not some like policy, obscure academic conversation. This is bring it home.
Yeah.
Here, but it is, I think it does risk the consequence of some parents perhaps escalating this quicker. If the age is 12, everyone's going to know, well, at 11, if I'm on the fence here, I better start because then my kid's not going to be able to play women's sports growing up. Again, these are crazy things to consider in these conversations, but they're crazy conversations, so I would not be surprised. You don't want to incentivize this. But I think another part of this conversation is like, if a kid at 8 years old has the ability to make a decision as important as what gender they are and what surgeries they're going to go to and how their puberty will be manipulated and altered by hormones and all these incredibly important things, some of which cannot be reversed. How do you defend age of consent laws? How do you defend some pedophile later on who's going to come on and say, hey, I want to have sex with this 8-year-old, and she said yes. She can decide if she's a boy or a girl. Obviously, she can decide whether she can have sex one time. That's objectively, a much less consequential decision. It's very consequential, but a much less consequential decision than changing your entire gender for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's psychotic. And like, how do you defend these things when you go down these roads? Like, it does seem like there's a target at the end of this, and it's taking all innocence and possibility of innocence away from children. And it, the slippery slope argument has taken a beating at times because people criticize it as a lazy part of arguing, and so at times it can be. The revenge of the slippery slope is here.
Yeah.
We see how slippery this slope is. It is incredibly slick, and people keep winding up at piles at the bottom of it. And if we don't do something to change this around, we are going to really have the very bottom of that slope be our reality.
Look how quick the whole transgender children thing became like something that's of a conversation when, like I said, maybe even 5 years ago, you probably willing to bare knuckle box over someone even bringing something up like that because you consider them weird.
Right.
But now it's like a conversation that people are just having freely. Goes to show how fast this could certainly happen. And it wasn't a slope after all. That's the only thing they were wrong about. It wasn't a slope. It was a cliff is what it was. And that there's nothing there anymore at that point. You're not going down that way. The trajectory is straight down and we're at a free fall because every day I'm like, it can't possibly get worse. This can't possibly get more egregious, and us having this conversation, and yet it does. And I think it says a lot to the culture that they are so open about talking about this sort of stuff, like with Discovery putting out that show talking about the kids and drag and all this sort of stuff. And they're putting that stuff out to be purchased, obviously, on their streaming platform, meaning they fear no consequence whatsoever. It just goes to show how far we've come.
Yeah. Sadly, how far we've come. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. We will be back with more. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Healthy Cell. So if you are taking, daily vitamins, supplements, whatever it is, if you're taking it in pill form, what you don't realize is that you're not getting the promised results because you can't absorb the nutrients properly in that pill form. That's why you have to try Healthy Cell. It not only tastes great, it has 165% more absorption than pills. It's a gel. It's a new technology technology called microgel, and it delivers maximum absorption. If you are using these tablets, these capsules, whatever it is, you probably also don't realize these are a bunch of synthetic ingredients like binding glues, fillers, and coatings that can irritate the lining of your stomach. And Healthy Cell has a bunch of gut-healthy ingredients that are not going to do that. There's no reason to keep wasting your money on those traditional vitamins. You got to try Healthy Cell. My entire house uses Healthy Cell. We all love it. You got to try it. You can go to healthycell.com/news. Get you a daily multivitamin. Get you a supplement for sleep. Get you one to help you focus. They've got it all over at healthycll.com. Use code NEWS for 20% off your first order. What happened in Uvalde continues to get murkier the more details that come out. Law enforcement officials reportedly never tried to open the door at a Texas elementary school last month where, of course, the shooter murdered 19 children. Surveillance footage shows the police never tried to open a door to 2 classrooms at Robb Elementary School in the, of course, we now know 77 minutes between the time that the gunman entered the rooms and did what he did. A couple things to this, guys, that I want to get your take on, and I'm trying to deliver this story as calmly as possible because it really continues to infuriate me the more details that come out. But so the doors are apparently designed so that they can only be locked or unlocked from the outside. They said police might have assumed that the door was locked, but it didn't really matter either way because officers had access the entire time to a Halligan, which is like a crowbar that they would have been able to use to get the doors open anyway, even if they were locked. On top of that, to make matters even more confusing, we're now finding out that a law enforcement official with the city, so this is a city law enforcement official, not the school district, he was armed with an AR-15 and had the opportunity to shoot the shooter before he entered the school, but didn't because he was worried he might hit kids in the background. So instead, he stood out there for 77 minutes while they knew what he was going in there to do and just was like, I don't know, I guess we'll just wait and see how this turns out. Like, I can't possibly fathom what in the world happened there, but it certainly stinks because now we're finding out that the city is not cooperating with other law enforcement officials who are trying to get down to the bottom of it. It's just absolutely infuriating that you had how many officers out here and none of them, even if this was the directive, none of them thought, you know what, screw that. I'm going in to go save the children. I don't care what my superior told me. Between this and all of the crap that happened with COVID, I'm like,
you on my side on this is what you're saying now? You where I'm at? I say it because, I've been saying it for as long as I've been believing what it is that I'm believing in. I think a lot of folks between these various different situations that have gotten so many eyes have become what people would deem red-pilled on the law enforcement officers. I think what people have is this idea of what they expect and anticipate that what the cops are to be. But that's not actually what it is that they are. They don't even by, various Supreme Court cases has already affirmed that they have zero obligation to protect you. Zero. But we have this moronic impression that they're there to protect us, let alone that your beloved Constitution, which is simply not what it is that they do. If they were, only one of these things can be true, or both maybe, but rather one of them has to be true. More specifically with this, it's like, look, you say that they're there to serve and protect you. And then in the event that they are, let's say, in error or their superiors or somebody tells them to stand down, you say, well, it's not their fault, it's someone else's fault. Okay, if that's the case, well, they can't be there to serve and protect these other people, because if they actually were doing that, it wouldn't matter what these people had to say. If they were genuinely good people that cared not about the pensions, not about the job or anything, but they cared about protecting you and your children, more important. We ain't talking about people that were just sitting ducks, adults like myself. We are talking about children that cannot defend themselves, and they sat outside and did absolutely nothing. Going back to the Summer of Love in 2020, this wasn't just some contained, isolated event. City to city, you watch these groups of people watch your house, not your business, get burned to the absolute ground, did nothing. In fact, if you dared to defend yourself against or your business against a looter, they punished you, is what they did. There needs to be, you want to talk about reform, what we need is a reformation process of people's expectation of that institution. It doesn't matter where you're at on this side of the political aisle. This doesn't mean that we allow the left, which is I think what a lot of people that are conservative or even libertarian have done with some of these cops, is that they allow the left to control the conversation. So they think, oh, I got to be on the side of them because they act like they hate the police and everything it is that they're about. Well, no. Actually, rationalize what it is they're saying. They're just as much pro-police, if not more. They just want a woke version of it because they have they showed you in the Summer of Love of 2020. They have no problem, no matter how much they want to defund them, sending them to destroy you in the event that they want to because you're their ideological enemies. This is why so many of these gun laws, man, so many of these different laws that are in place that strap people's hands behind their backs are some of the most egregious ones because they want you to basically trust in and rely upon that same institution of people that watch how many, I don't even want to say the number because it's too high, children be slaughtered, and they could have done something. Even if it was at failure, they could have gave it a shot. They didn't. They just sat there and nothing happened, and unfortunately, the lives of many children were lost because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes you look at situations like this and you think like, well, you know, you wish there was some superhero officer there that would go in and do some amazing thing.
I mean, a mom did.
I know, that's kind of where I was going. Like, I don't know that you needed a superhero here to make these types of decisions. This is just like, I think average people would have been doing. They were begging to go in
and got
standing there and got
That's a good point. I even mentioned that.
Yeah,
good point.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's really. I think the reason why it hasn't been the focus of this is because the left wants to talk about gun laws so much. They want to take the conversation in that direction. You know, like one of the first criticisms that they had of conservatives who were saying like, hey, like maybe, I don't know, maybe a teacher who's trained and has a weapon should have it there, or maybe you have security officers there that you hire to come and protect the schools. And their first answer to that was, well, that didn't even work. Look, it didn't even work there. The good guy with a gun was there and nothing happened. They stood outside for 77 minutes. Well, you're not a good guy with a gun if you stand outside for 77 minutes.
Good point.
Right? Like, I mean, it does include people acting. And I do think, you know, because I think you're right, like sometimes conservatives wind up taking into this police and they internalize this sort of hero concept and make them all good guys. And they're not, obviously. The institution, though, as a whole has ups and downs. If you give too much power to them, they will do a lot of bad things. And just like any other government institution, you have to constantly watch that. And you have to also be able to step back and say, like, these are basic things that I think, I can't imagine that there weren't any police officers there at all that wanted to act. But like, at some point, you have to just get out of that box and go, right?
Yes.
I mean, the kids' lives are at stake.
If not for that, what?
Yeah, and it becomes really indefensible.
Seriously.
Like some of these things happen where like the officers might think there were no kids for a while. They were dead already, and the guy was just he was hunkered down in this room, and no more damage was going to be done. But like there were calls coming from inside the room. And they still didn't go in for 40 minutes after. I mean, it's just completely incomprehensible how this thing went down. And like, I know the left wants to make it their agenda, and so they're trying to push the conversation this way. But like, every one of these incidents, as terrible as they are, usually has a different thing to learn from and to undercover. And what I think we've learned in the last two big ones, at schools in particular, were just the people who were there, who were supposed to defend the school, didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And, I think there's a lesson to be learned institutionally about how much we should be able to rely on that. As Glenn always says, they are not the first responders. We are the first responders. Yes. And so it's important to make sure we look at ourselves that way and take responsibility, as that one mom did. I mean, think about what it's like to run into a school. I don't think she had any weapons or anything. No, she just ran in. Yeah. It took her kid out of there. I mean, it's incredible.
It would have been me.
And 100%.
Right?
First of all, I know it would have been you, except you probably would have had a bunch of weapons.
I would have. That's true. That's true. And you know what I would have said to the officers? I dare you to shoot
Yeah,
me.
that's
I'm
what
going
you're
in.
gonna have to
I'm
do.
going in
That's
there and
what
I'm
you're
getting
gonna
my
have to
kid.
do.
You want to
Yeah.
shoot me? Shoot
Go
me.
for it.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
That's scary, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that's scary that we have to get there. I think from this particular incident, though, the thing to learn is not that we should, adjust on the fringe some gun law like that they want to make, whether even the ones the Republicans are going along with. It's that, the police response here needs to be understood, and it needs to be understood how this could happen. Because even back in the day, there were different approaches to these type of incidents. Mm-hmm. And that supposedly was all changed years and years and years ago. These guys have been trained on this type of thing all this time to make sure you go in there no matter what. You go and you end the threat no matter what. They didn't do it. There's a million people probably responsible for that in the police department and in the surrounding power structure. We got to root that out, but it also needs to be spread around the whole country because this could happen again. I mean, it will. Yeah. There's no way in a country with 330 million people and 100,000 schools, or 150,000 schools, that this is not going to happen again. We know it is. You can do all your liberal talking points you want that you think it's about guns, but even if you're right, there's 400 million guns out there already. So it's a nonsensical part of this equation. You can't compare us to New Zealand when you're talking about
how about
this?
It is about guns. It's about the fact that you can't leave them all to the law enforcement and hope that they're the ones who save you, because sometimes they won't. So it's like, it is about the guns. It's about the fact that more people need more guns. This happened in a gun-free zone, might I add.
And that's
it always seems
That's my most frustrating part about all of this is that the fact that there are people that have to second guess, because this is really what happens. You have like duty to retreat laws and certain spots. So before you lay down a threat, you have to sit up here and think like, am I going to be incriminated because of the fact that there's laws out there on the books are especially egregious. And this is what I always talk about of folks that value gun rights, need to be getting on the offense about that stuff and getting rid of those, because that in itself is why so many people hesitate to, because they're like, well, I'm going to be incriminated if I do something, so it's better off that I just let it happen, when we know that is not the preferable action.
You're totally right. When I took my concealed carry course here in Texas, 3/4 of it was what would happen, all the terrible things that will happen to you if someone breaks into your home and you have to shoot them. It's going to be a disaster. This is not going to be something you're going to celebrate. This is going to be a complete catastrophe. Your whole life is probably going to be destroyed. Here's your license. It was not,
Congrats.
Congrats. And I think, too, to your point here, Eric, it's a great one, in that, you described an officer who said they had the shot and was worried about the consequences.
That's
Is it really about a kid in the background, or is it about the fact that they didn't want to be the one who shot somebody, and then they find out it was some other consequence or some other situation they hadn't considered was a problem? We see that happen all the time. And in this issue, because a lot of times the problem is it takes too long for police officers to get there, but that wasn't the case here. They were on scene almost immediately. It was actually an incredibly fast response time. And then the latest, and these things keep changing, so I can't 100% know if this is true, but the latest is that he was outside shooting for 12 minutes before he went inside. How on earth is it possible that played out that way? I mean, it just seems like massive incompetence on a scale I honestly, it's hard to consider as possible.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be back. It's so infuriating to me every time I read more. And, the sad part is I feel like a lot of people over the weekend, Joe Biden had an oopsie. He was going for a bike ride because he's so young and vivacious and very, very fit, obviously, to be both president and physically. And so he was going for a bike ride, and he fell off of his bike. But you would think when I'm saying this that he fell while he was riding his bike, but no, it was actually while he was stationary on his bike. Let's watch. Hey, I'm getting off for a photo op. There I go. Down goes Joe. Oh, man.
Such a weird thing.
The
memes were glorious.
They were so amazing. And look, I'm not going to give him credit for this because the left never would ever. I mean, they called for the 25th Amendment because Donald Trump walked down a ramp too slowly, right?
Couldn't get his water up to his mouth with those two hands.
He didn't trip. He didn't fall. He didn't trip up the steps of Air Force One. He didn't fall up a bike. And they still called for this. So I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. However, apparently his foot, if you look, is caught in like a pedal strap, a pedal cage or whatever you call it. But he still has another foot on the ground.
Yeah, I don't know why he started leaning that way, considering that he couldn't get his footing. That's what I didn't understand.
His foot wasn't out, and he thought it would be a good idea.
That's why it doesn't make sense. That's why I'm thinking it was like a malfunction here, because he's like, I hate to just dissect it that much, but think about it. If you're on a bike and he's already leaning to the left.
You would lean.
So why did he start going the other way? Because instead of resting it on my left foot, I want to rest on my right foot.
Right.
And even though I haven't actually got my footing, I'm committed. So here I go. Good. And that's exactly what happens. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Eric's got this Zapruder film of the analysis.
I'm just wondering.
Sports guy.
I'm just wondering when the White House will blame Putin for this.
Yes, at any time. Well, I'm looking for common sense bike reform. I mean, you should not have. Why don't we change the age limit? I mean, 78, point. Maybe you can bike safely, but 79 is obviously over the limit.
Too far.
It really is. But there's something too about, to go to your analysis part of this. It's not just that he falls almost as a limp life form. Like he is completely devoid of reaction as he goes toward the ground. It's so weird.
And the picture that came out of him like on all fours.
Oh man, that's so good. It's so good. I've seen so many meme videos of that and him ending up that way. I just didn't understand it, but it just shows, just with like other things, like he's not firing on all cylinders. It seems like a small thing, but when you consider that in context of his other gas, this is the reason why it's worth talking about. Because obviously it was a hop. It was like, hey, we want to show how physically it backfired, albeit because they walked into this. They didn't. Why in the world is the president biking in this way for this op or whatever? They only did that to signal, and it just backfired.
Yeah, it's true, because all the crowd had their phones out ready to watch him ride by.
Yeah, the political
they didn't realize he'd be falling in their laps.
Right, it was to show him as a man with energy. Yeah, everyone's saying he's old. Look at this. Look at him ride his bike. He's out there. He's doing things. A lot of people aren't doing that. He's out there exercising. He's a virile young man. Oh, he just fell over. That is every one of his advisors. And I actually feel there's something I feel for the advisors of Biden. Because at some level, they should just be able, they just want to just read the prompter. Just walk. Stop falling up. When you're walking upstairs, will you stop falling over? But there's no way to hide it. No. This is just who he is, and it's the state he's in. It's
also,
terrifying.
Stop yelling angrily at the audience. And
save lives, man. We're changing lives.
And simultaneously stop whispering to them.
Yeah.
Just talk normal, please.
Yeah, the one in the
whispering.
Middle. Hit the one in the middle.
No whispering, no yelling. Just the regular one, please, Joe, is what we want. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll be back with more.
I could watch that for you all day.
It's so good.
There's just something so great about it.
A lot of you have asked for an update to the Beto O'Rourke saga. I'm sorry, it's Robert Francis O'Rourke. I apologize. Between myself and his staffers and the city of Dallas, we were talking about police officer reform earlier in the program. For those of you who don't remember or did not watch, in March, I was trying to record an interaction with Beto and one of his other constituents, and that's when this happened.
Oh, sorry, we're not recording. No, sorry. Don't touch my phone. We're not recording. Don't touch my phone. Excuse me. What's your badge number? Why did you just push me down the... That's fine, but why did she just put her hands on me so hard?
She asked you to leave and you're not leaving.
No, she didn't.
No, she didn't.
Ask me to leave at all. She pushed me down the stairs.
I'm telling you to leave.
So the staffer was cited for assault. And I filed, of course, a complaint against the police officer. That investigation is still pending. But I have gone ahead and officially filed a federal lawsuit against both the city of Dallas, the staffer for Beto for Texas, the Beto for Texas campaign, and the specific officer who assaulted and violated my civil rights. Look, I'm not saying that I'm some sort of a victim here. I know that there are people who have far worse things happen to them done by police officers or people in power, but oftentimes those people don't have the ability to fight back, and it's time that we start holding these people accountable. So we filed the lawsuit, and we'll see what happens, but it's just, something about Robert Francis using Dallas PD as his mafia muscle just doesn't sit right with me.
I would hope that it doesn't. This is going to be interesting. I'm interested to see how this sort of thing turns out, because oftentimes, to your point, when definitely by hands of the police, when they do something stupid, because of what the institution is, a lot of people just say, I'm not going to do anything for it. This is just kind of what happens. This is the process. So the fact that there's anybody that's willing to fight back to that is a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I feel bad for Beto here. I mean, he's already got a very uphill battle, and now he has to deal with this too. I mean, jeez.
Bummer.
That's terrible.
Wow.
It's terrible news for Beto.
Well, we hope so anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining me.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are following Eric July, Stubergear, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.